Russia-Ukraine news. China can learn from Putin's blunder. Ukrainians have been lifting their spirits as of late by using drones to attack targets in Moscow's upscale western suburbs and central business district. The Russians, who almost every night bomb Ukrainian cities and kill civilians, call this terrorism. A Ukrainian drone was shot down last week over the city of Istra, home to those who aren't quite wealthy enough to live in Rublevka. Mansions costing over $2 million, the debris fell on the street next to us, grumbled Margarita Simonyan, editor-in-chief of TV network Russia Today and a prominent on-screen supporter of Vladimir Putin's war. When reporters from local news outlets came out the next morning to conduct Vox Pop interviews, one brave Moscovite voiced his displeasure at the oversight. Although others were more circumspect in their language, they were surprisingly upbeat when discussing Simonyan's terrifying ordeal. Metal debris was raining down, but thankfully it was only hitting the right people. There is no reason to believe that the Russian people will rise up in a wave of righteous indignation and overthrow their evil dictator as a result of this. That ordinary Russians view Putin's war in Ukraine as an elite affair and of no concern to them is further evidence that the media's unrelenting adulation of President Putin has little effect. Putin's predicament 2 years ago, when he was debating whether to invade Ukraine, has parallels with that of China's all-powerful leader Xi Jinping today. Even if Xi doesn't see the similarities, the message is clear: stay away from Taiwan. Putin invaded Ukraine out of a sense of legacy and a belief that he must reunite all the Russias. Even at home, he faced little opposition. People were content with the modest income that oil and gas exports provided. Poor government service is something Russians are used to. A lot of young Russian men have been killed or wounded for no reason, and now he is stuck in a military stalemate in Ukraine as a result of his foolish invasion. Strict sanctions are beginning to unravel his economy, and bits of the war there are coming home to Russia. When compared to Putin's predicament 2 years ago, Xi's is much more dire. The Chinese public has much higher hopes for economic growth than the Russians do, despite the fact that China's economy is currently slowing down at a much more rapid rate than Russia's. Jobs are disappearing at an alarming rate. The unemployment rate for people aged 16 to 24 rose to over 21% before the government stopped tracking it. The economy has entered a deflationary spiral, and the regime is afraid to try to reinflate its way out of trouble, as it has so often in the past, because the debt burden is already extremely high. Like Putin did with Ukraine, Xi will be wondering if now is the time to invade Taiwan in order to force its reunification with China against the will of the local population. He could win back support if he were to quickly succeed. He might reason that it would be simple since the Americans wouldn't get involved. Vice President Joe Biden does not want U.S.-Chinese trade and the economy to grind to a halt as a result of sanctions imposed on Beijing. But look at how things turned out for Putin in reality. While the United States and NATO did not go to war on behalf of Ukraine, they did ensure that the country had the resources it needed to survive, including heavy economic sanctions against Russia. Because its entire economy is dependent on international trade, China is much more susceptible to sanctions. The developed countries that make up the bulk of China's customer base would feel the effects of these sanctions as well. Sanctions would still be implemented because of the widespread belief in the West and, to a lesser extent, East Asia, that aggressive behavior from major powers must be curbed at an early stage to prevent the rise of a global superpower. This is a false belief. Similar to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be a local land grab for petty personal reasons. Neither would be a prelude to a global invasion. However, the myth was successful in Ukraine and could be in Taiwan as well. Russia was hit with severe sanctions, and soon China would too. Putin made a mistake that Xi should not repeat. It would be disastrous if he repeated the same error.